Welcome back to Echo Ridge. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a couple of new colonies, except these colonies aren't mine. We received 3 new submissions for the Colony Fixer Up series. Now, the Colony Fixer Up series is not necessarily meaning that the person needs something fixed. Maybe they're just looking for some advice, or maybe they just want a general idea on what I think about their colony. This first one is from Dell, and it's called Super Dreamland. And the first thing you notice is this absolutely gorgeous apartment system. There are currently 18 duplicants on this colony. Each one of them has their own apartments. And it looks like the doors only allow duplicants to go this way through them. So they would come down here, they would slide down this wonderful pole, they could hit some thimble reeds, and then they would just launch back to wherever they needed to go. I love how each apartment has a wonderful little pedestal. Lead researcher Jean lives here, and they have a little airplane. Runner Catalina lives here, and they have a... Wait a minute. It's an archaic tech, except this hasn't been brought to the... here it is. The Artifact Analysis Station. And it's because Dell's still working on the research here. But once they do get the Artifact Analysis Station, I'm sure Runner Catalina would appreciate being able to see their archaic tech, which is just a VHS tape. Most people know that here on Echo Ridge Gaming, we're a big fan of the showers, and these have a couple of lamps, some nice hanging pots, which helps give the overall apartment a very nice decor bonus. Now, the great thing about this system is it just leads them to another enclosed area. They could drop off here and jump into suits, where they then will take another transit tube to get outside of the colony. They could go here, which is, we'll say, the communal area. It has all the mess tables, a nice little hospital, even a massage room. Unfortunately, though, while we do have the Great Hall and the hospital triggering, we don't have the massage clinic. And for those you don't know, the massage clinic will significantly improve the stress reduction being caused by the massage tables in this room. Of course, they're also not hooked up to power, so this may still be a work in progress. Well, look at this. We have a transformer right here. Let's just go ahead and mess up Dell's base with some spaghetti-like wiring and get this massage clinic online, shall we? What kind of decor do we have access to? Oh, beautiful. We have gold. We'll put some nice gold statues here and then follow it up some flower pots. And thanks to Clay, I actually have the new Sunny Retro flower pot. So we're definitely going to take advantage of these and build a couple out of granite. There we go. Now we have the beautiful massage clinic. Not that I think the dupes will ever need it here in this colony, because there's no stress. I absolutely love all the transit tubes everywhere. It's something I need to do a little bit more in some of my later game colonies, because the transit tubes really do help with getting the dupes where they need to go in a hurry. And you can do some pretty cool things with them. Looks like we're growing a bunch of bristle blossom here, and some wonderful sleet wheat, which means berry sludge must be on the menu. In fact, there it is. 406,000 calories worth of berry sludge. I wonder what's going on with the irrigation though. Now, this is a pretty ingenious system. It took me a second to map it out, but all the water is being temperature regulated in here. It's sort of like a giant loop. The water is then pumped, brought over here, into the thermal aqua tuner to make sure it's cold enough. Right now, it's set on 14.4 degrees. The water then continues around, all in insulated pipes, until it reaches this wonderful buffer tank. And you know we like some buffer tanks. From there, it then goes into this liquid shutoff. Right now, the liquid shutoff is enabled, and because of that, this line is empty. But once all the liquids did go in there, they would hit this buffer tank, circle back around, and then check and see whether or not the water is cold enough. If it is, it looks like it's going to be fed to the sleet wheat. If it's not, it rejoins the coolant loop, and it's the same way with this shutoff, controlling the ingest of that irrigation. This thermosensor is set on, if it's above 3.9 degrees, activate it, and then send it on. Now, all of that water is actually coming from a massive system here with a couple of inputs. This monstrous buffer tank, which joins up with a lot of the water from this loop here, and eventually gets filtered out, where if it's polluted, it ends up in this storage unit, where it's fed to a couple water sieves. And then once it's cleaned out of the water sieves, it goes through another system to make sure that the water is clean, because this whole room is filled with chlorine. In fact, they're even utilizing a germ sensor that says, hey, if there are any germs in here, that water's staying in here. Otherwise, it's allowed to leave, where it then starts its long journey around the colony. Starting with this gorgeous little system here. The water is stored in one massive tank here, but also in the buffer tanks that are in it, where eventually that water then comes back out and head towards a few soggy electrolyzers, the bristle blossoms and the sleet wheat, bristle blossoms being fed to glossy drecos, and what looks like it's going to be eventually a nice little Pacu system. Oh, and a supply teleporter input, heading over to Ikora. And the Royal Society for the Strip Mining of Asteroids would really approve of these two colonies, because it looks like the intention is to strip mine both of them. They're almost finished here on Ikora, and even over here on Blumani. Oh, I like this. It looks like this is a future spaceport. So what are we doing with all that water over here on the second colony? Feeding another soggy Rodriguez, and what looks like eventually going to be filled the world's largest buffer tank farm. Well done, Dell. You may notice also there's a bunch of solid tiles on the edge of these colonies. Now this does a couple of things for you. Some people like it because then you just have a nice square box to work in, but the more you can fill in on your colonies with solid tiles, the better the performance is going to be. Some other features on this colony is a wonderful dirty brick. Look at all this beautiful carbon dioxide. It looks like we have a few sources here. One being a row of coal generators. It looks like the filters are not set yet on the power control stations, but they soon will. And once they do, it's going to amplify how much power is being generated here by 50%, which is very nice. We also have a run of hydrogen generators. It looks like these are just overflows from the soggy Rodriguez's. And then we have some natural gas generators being supplied from a pair of natural gas geysers. One here and one way over here. I like how they put these in vertically. It's a nice, clean, small footprint. The hydrogen generator's also getting some hydrogen from a beautiful hydrogen vent here. Right now it's dormant, but when it does activate, it looks like this whole system is kept cool by use of a thermo-aqua tuner and steam turbine system. It's a very interesting design. Right now it's closed up and duplicants can't get into it, but at one time they could, and they would be able to go down these little levels here. I believe Dell put this sort of separation in because they were worried about the 500C, so they put it away a little bit. That way the liquids would have a chance to cool it, and then just in case, they left a little bit of hydrogen in here because the pump is being controlled by a pair of automation that says, hey, as long as the temperature is below 38 and the pressure is above 1,000 grams. Now, I'm pretty sure this whole system would have worked if they would have just sandwiched everything in with the same amount of automation and continuing the coolant loop in. But this system works well, and it's not cookie cutter, so hats off. And the final system I wanted to highlight here on Dell's Colony is the wonderful geothermal power plant. Now this design is absolutely beautiful. You can see what they've done here is put some mechanized airlocks in a vacuum trapped by two tiles. So the magma itself touches the metal tiles, and when the steam room needs some more heat, these doors are going to shut, all being controlled by one AND gate and a couple of thermosensors. Now all this is in a vacuum, which is good, except my only concern is, well, all the liquid locks are made out of water. It may be all that they had, but I'd be very careful, especially if you have any plans on eventually grabbing some of this wonderful debris here, which it looks like you do, because there's some sweep commands here. Now eventually all this magma is going to drop a little bit, and it's not actually going to be touching any of these metal tiles. It's going to be a while because this magma pool is all connected from the right side of the colony all the way to the left side of the colony. The only suggestion I would have is you're already planning on making great use of the power control stations, but as a reminder, they work on steam turbines too. Now power plants themselves can only be 96 tiles, so you'd probably have to get rid of one steam turbine, but you could do this in a couple of different ways. You could add another steam turbine to this position here, and then split these into two power plants. You have plenty of room to extend this over, and then you'd be getting a lot more than 850 watts per steam turbine. Not that you need it, but it would help make all this magma last even longer. Now in their email, Dell said they're not very good at games. Well, I disagree, because this is a wonderful colony that is working great, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. So well done, Dell, and thank you for the submission. The second colony submission, the Unstoppable Rat's Nest, was sent to us from MasterAnimal. MasterAnimal did the 75 dupe challenge, and this is that playthrough. One thing to note, they didn't just make it to Cycle 75, they came through with flying colors. Look at the amount of pickled meal. Now there's no telling what this colony looked like on Cycle 40, Cycle 20, but I am positive it didn't look exactly like this. There are an absolute ton of farm tiles. They're everywhere. I'm assuming they went max on the mealwoods, and you can tell a little bit because there's some mealwood seeds laying here and there. They also have a wonderful bristle blossom farm, which is being supplied by this wonderful ice biome here that is conveniently located right next to a cool steam vent. So the cool steam vent erupts, but because it's so cold here, all that water just drips on down, which eventually melted the whole biome and left a bunch of usable water. There's 2 bathroom setups, one on this side of the colony, and then one on this side of the colony. Both have a pair of water sieves feeding some wonderful thimbleweeds. And you can tell that system's been working well for a little while now because they're already up to 56 reed fiber. And remember, it's only Cycle 76. Now this colony wouldn't last forever as is, for the simple reason all the oxygen is being supplied by this pool here. And all that water is being supplied to 10 Soggy Rodriguez. I love the pair of inline systems here. Water and polluted water go right through the desalinator into the water sieve where they're cleaned. If it's salt or brine, well, then the desalinator is going to take care of it. No filters needed. I love looking and seeing where the oxygen's actually going. It's going everywhere. But that's what happens when you're using 20 gas pumps to be able to supply all your dupes the oxygen they need. They're also supplying oxygen for a bunch of oxygen mask docks, which I thought was pretty cool. Those oxygen masks really help when your dupes have to work into an area that's full of either carbon dioxide or chlorine or something else they can't breathe. The power in the colony is being mostly supplied by 5 hydrogen generators. We also have a wonderful compost farm sitting right next to an ice biome, which is perfect because remember, those composts get very hot. You can see how far this colony's come when you take a look at the wonderful massage clinic that was probably necessary when MasterAnimal started out. They also have a nice little hospital here too, though. Now, considering how much water is actually on this planetoid, from either that cool steam vent we showed earlier before, or this wonderful saltwater geyser up here, that was at one time feeding a bunch of lettuce, is if you have the dupe labor, you can turn all that meal ice into lice loaf. Yeah, it doesn't cook it, so it'll still be germy, but you take meal lice, you add 50 kilos worth of water, and you get a lot more lice loaf for your efforts, from 1,200 to 1,700 calories. You have to be careful though, because the duplicate labor cost can set you back. One thing I did like, because remember at the beginning of these runs, you're gonna have to be running on mush bars anyways, is they put a nice little water tank here with a pair of pitcher pumps. That way it didn't take duplicates running very far to go get the water necessary for the mush bars. Apparently it just took a second for the graphics to update. Now it looks like a proper compost farm. On the food front, they were also growing some dust caps, which is great when you have some sources of slime and a little bit of carbon dioxide sitting around. The biggest benefit is those fried mushrooms are worth a +1 to morale, as compared to the pickle meal or the mush bars, which is a -1 to morale. Now, if you're cooking all those mush bars into mush fries, you can get up to a 0 net change in morale, which at the minimum is better than losing. Another benefit of the lice loaf is, yeah, it has the same quality as mush fry, it only has to be prepared once. For instance, making mush bars in a mush fry, you have to make the mush bar here, and then cook it in the mush fry over at the electric grill. So in some of your attempts, going directly to your lice loaf may help. The MasterAnimal also went with the no-caught strategy, which I think is probably smart in the 75 dupe run. You can definitely get away with cots in the 50 dupe challenge, but I'm not sure if they're worth it in the 75 dupe challenge. I love the use of the environment around the colony, first by allowing the steam vent to melt the ice biome, which gives you even more water, and then also putting the compost right next to another tundra biome to help mitigate some of that heat. And then MasterAnimal, of course, was styling out a little bit. Look at the wonderful jukebox. I am sure this was a reward for the duplicants for making it to Cycle 75. So hats off to MasterAnimal on a job well done. And thank you for submitting the colony for all of us to enjoy. Our last colony submission from today is Trainwreck, submitted to us from Gilmord. Now, Gilmord wanted us to highlight the planetoid Zucchini here and the amazing efforts by Bonnie to colonize the whole thing. Look at that snazzy outfit Bonnie's wearing. It's the purple polyester suit, in case anybody was wondering. But in order to properly take a look at that planetoid, we need to find home first, and that's here on Sanctoni. That is capped off with a wonderful monument and 4 million calories worth of berry sludge. Some nice features here is every duplicant has their own luxury barracks, so they're getting the increased +2 to morale, and each luxury barracks is equipped with some carpeted tile so they can get their tootsies tickled. A beautiful bathroom with some wonderful crown molding, always nice to see. We also have a perfectly placed nature reserve for an automatic +6 to morale, and it doesn't matter what the duplicants do, as soon as they come out of their bedrooms, they're getting hit with that +6 nature reserve. So well done on the placement of that. We have a wonderful little hospital down here, the docks to the outside of the colony, a functional recreation room, complete with both the arcade cabinet and the soda fountain. Oh, and you can't forget the party line phone. And then we have a kitchen setup, complete with gas range and spice grinder. A couple of things I wanted to highlight. I've always liked solutions that were just sort of brute force. For instance, we have a cool steam vent here. There's no cooling or anything here. There's just so much water and environment that as soon as this thing erupts, most of that steam turns right into water and then drops down into this huge tank. Because of that, though, this water is sitting at 70 to 80 degrees. Not too big of a deal, but then we have the liquid pipe that's going right through the middle of the base. Once again, still not a big deal because all the duplicants are in suits out here. But it is definitely something to keep an eye on, because as you can see, it's pretty hot on the outside of this base, and I'm sure most of that reason is all this water going right across the colony. Speaking of cooling, look at this massive supercoolant line, all being cooled by this one thermo aqua tuner sitting in this beautiful industrial sauna, but it comes across here, it keeps the main part of the base cool, and then also takes a sideline up here to make sure the Drecos and the pit stables are also cool enough. We have a cool salt slush geyser, and all that beautiful cold brine coming out of it is going through a pair of desalinators, but not before being warmed up by some liquid tepidizers. After the liquid tepidizers make sure that the brine is warm enough, they get desalinated and then head down into a row of buffer tanks, which the clean water then is sent into the SPOM, which is a very interesting take on the SPOM setup. They're only running with the 2 hydrogen generators, which means there has to be an overflow somewhere. Here it is, and it's also being backfed by this hydrogen vent, and unfortunately this gas pump didn't make it. Where's the rest of that hydrogen going? We're going to follow the line all the way over here. Oh yes, more buffer tanks. After all that hydrogen gets stored up into these 8 buffer tanks, we then follow it down here, pass through here, and then voila, back to our industrial sauna. Absolutely magical. We have 2 hydrogen generators that are actually set on 100 and 0. So I'm guessing these are last resort power supplies. And then the other 2 are just burning everything off. A quick tip here, you would need some sort of active cooling in this current setup because the steel gas pump is so close to this vent. I've seen systems like this work, but they normally separate the gas pump a decent bit. That way the steam turbine gets an opportunity to keep everything in here cool before the hot 500 degree hydrogen ends up damaging that gas pump. The second thing I wanted to mention is just a sort of personal preference, because I think this system here is beautiful, is you could have taken all that nice and cold brine and instead of sending it past a pair of liquid tepidizers, just route it in your SPOM itself. Remember, the SPOM itself is pretty warm, definitely warm enough to heat up the brine before it gets turned into water. And then we have this, which might be my favorite feature on this planetoid. It's an absolute monster sleetweed and bristle blossom farm. Hence how they were able to get up to 4.5 million calories worth of berry sludge. And I'll be honest, I'm still confused by it, because I'm not sure what is causing all the chill in here. I know we have some ice, which once it gets warm enough will definitely melt. All the sweepy dogs and the auto sweepers, not to mention the conveyor loaders, all produce heat. In the conveyor loaders case, it's plus 2,000 DTUs. Sweepy dog, plus 1,000 DTUs. Auto sweeper, plus 2,000 DTUs. And yet there's no active cooling in here. Now, because it was at the top of the planetoid, I'm assuming this area was already very, very cold. It's only cycle 1000, so there's a potential that it could have lasted. But they even have the hydrogen being warmed up in the case that it falls below -20 by using a tepidizer and the hydrogen going through this liquid pool. But there's no liquid pipes going through here. The hydrogen's not going through any thermal regulators or anything that I can see. So if my theory's correct, eventually this is going to stop working. Now to fix it, all you'd have to do is put a thermal regulator somewhere on this line to keep it chill, but I don't see the thermal regulator. Either way, that much sleet wheat naturally planted with all these beautiful bristle blossoms, absolutely beautiful. Take note that all the bristle blossoms are on do not harvest, so the farm waits for them to harvest themselves, and then the auto sweepers pick them up. Elsewhere on the spaceport, we have a nice little radiation center here, and there are enough shine bugs here, providing all sorts of radiation for 5 Radbolt generators, supplying not only the Radbolt engine, but also some wonderful diamond, along with an interplanetary launcher system. Alright, that's enough for the home planetoid. Let's go see what else was birthed off the backs of this colony. Heading to the star map, Gilmord's pretty much explored the entire thing. I like going to find the gilded asteroid fields on every star map because they're the ones with the fullerene. First up, we have Credino. Credino was the connected planetoid, as you can tell from the teleporters, and there are currently 5 dupes living here. They have their own wonderful dirty brick. It looks like they're being fed off of grub fruit, but they also have a nice recreation room, complete with a juicer, a party line phone, and an arcade cabinet. We have a poke shelf stable here, but it doesn't look like they have any more polluted dirt or rot piles, so they are all pretty much starving. But hey, they'll still give you plenty of lime. And not only do we have slicksters here, but we also have a couple of oil wells that are tapped, and all that oil is being turned into petroleum, which is supplying a couple of petroleum generators, and it is also being fed back to the main colony. If I were to give you a suggestion, Gilmord, you have a wonderful opportunity here to make a petroleum boiler. You uncork this minor volcano and use it as the heat source, and turn all this crude oil into petroleum without the use of an oil refinery. I have a couple of videos on that if you wanted to check it out. We have a nice tamer here that's taking care of the liquid sulfur geyser. The whole area is being cooled by a thermal aqua tuner, and it's a good thing too because they have an attached debris chiller. That way all that wonderful sulfur is coming out around 26 degrees. Nicely done. And then we have what Gilmord is calling their most important project, Zappini, the forest asteroid. And apparently Bonnie did this all by herself. I love the addition of the carpeted tile inside the rocket. Gilmord cares about the tickled tootsies, and I appreciate that. Now the adaptable Gemini looks like it was the Mark I type of rocket for Gilmord and their colonies, because it's still running on the small petroleum engine. But there's a couple crops here. First, the arbor trees, but more importantly, aluminum. All coming out of this wonderful aluminum volcano, being guarded faithfully by Rover. Hi, Rover! Don't worry, buddy. One day Clay's gonna make a power pack for you, so we can turn you back on. So the idea here, according to Gilmord's email, is they're taking all the resources, such as the aluminum, sending it through a wonderful debris chiller, and then to launch it home. Well, there's gonna be a couple of problems that Gilmord's gonna face. First, there's solar panels in the way. So this interplanetary launcher isn't gonna actually be able to shoot past these solar panels. There's also another aluminum volcano here, but it's having a little bit of problems, and it could be just how close this auto sweeper is. And I feel their pain, but it just may be that the aluminum volcano is just too close to this auto sweeper. So yeah, the steam is only 101 degrees, but when this aluminum volcano erupts, it's going to be blasting 6.8 kilos worth of 1700 degree aluminum, which may cause the temperature to spike a little bit too quickly for the steam turbines to be able to handle. But what's impressive about this is it's only Cycle 1000. Bonnie did this all by themselves. In the future, Gilmord said they wanted to make a nice ethanol factory, but unfortunately, their laptop has decided that this colony is no longer playable. I feel for you, Gilmord. We've all been there. And oh my goodness, I completely missed it. There's actually 2 gold volcanoes here too. One here and one here. That's 4 metal volcanoes on 1 seed. Now, just because of that fact, I know some folks are going to ask, but they're the coordinates. This planetoid also has a bunch of naturally occurring beta hives with a lot of uranium to be able to gut through. Now, this whole colony is being supplied by just a couple of solar panels, which raises a question from Gilmord. Says one of their main issues, how do I keep my solar panels clean of debris and cool and still generate power? I'm not exactly sure what they mean, because this asteroid doesn't have any meteors. So the only debris I'm thinking they're talking about are the ones coming from the payload opener. They are using a targeting beacon, so if you really want to keep the payloads off the solar panels, just move a couple of these solar panels away. But I can't imagine that that's what they're talking about, because normally those payloads aren't going to be too terribly hot depending on where you're shipping them from and what's in them, etc., etc. So it doesn't really matter, but you don't actually have to provide any sort of cooling for your solar panels. They don't generate heat. But just in case Gilmord is wondering, generally, I wanted to go over a couple of ideas. First, you can always put mesh tiles or window tiles above your solar panels. They don't block too much light. As you can see here, even with the dual layer of window tiles and mesh tiles, we're only seeing about a 10% reduction in light. That's not too shabby. And if you're using just mesh tiles, well, then it doesn't really block any light at all. We got 6110 over here and 6110 down here. The window tiles don't do as good. As you can see, we still have the same 6110, but after the wind tile, we have 5487. And then for whatever reason, if you have debris up here, you could just sweep it out. But they may be talking about protecting from meteors. In that case, the mesh tiles are not going to work. That's when you're going to have to use a space scanner and some bunker doors. Now, when the bunker doors are closed, you're not getting any light through. None. But if you add the space scanner and select, say, meteor showers or dupe-made ballistics, whenever the space scanner detects them, it's going to shut these bunker doors, which we can simulate using the pliers. The door is shut, everything will hit it that needs to, you can go clean it up, and then you can have it open back up. Which, by the way, that was my first time using Clay's new disconnect tool. Thank you very much, Clay, for adding this to the game. Now I can use it in my max achievement run. But like I said, I'm not sure why Gilmord's worried about that quite yet, unless they're just looking for a broader understanding of the game, because they shouldn't be getting much debris on their solar panels, especially considering they're using their targeting beacon, which directs the payloads where to go. Now remember, your targeting beacon will still let the payloads go, I think, 5 to the right or 5 to the left, somewhere in that vicinity, so maybe some of the payloads are still hitting their solar panels, in which case, just move a couple solar panels around, and you'll be good. But once again, hats off to Bonnie and to Gilmord for all the work on this planetoid, using only one duplicate. So we're going to close out this episode while looking at all three masterpieces and reminding everybody out there, it doesn't matter how long you've been playing the game, your creations are beautiful just the way they are. And I'm not saying that just to be cringy. I'm being very serious. Every creation, some of them good, some of them bad, have your personal thumbprint on them. It means you took the time while you were playing your game, relaxing, enjoying yourself, and you created something. And that's to be commended. Just like we commend Dell, MasterAnimal, and Gilmord for sharing their creations with us. Now, I know I said today's episode was actually going to be a game other than Oxygen Not Included, but these three colonies came in, and I figured we might as well take a look. Not to mention the fact I haven't figured out what other game I want to introduce to the channel. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode and the look at a few of our community members' colonies. So until next time, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.